In a distant land long, long ago, there lived a group of wise women with extraordinarily long lifespans.
Set in a fictional Western Europe is Namco-Bandai's Knight's Contract. This dark fantasy title follows a former witch executioner named Heinrich Hoffmann and the reincarnation of a good witch, Gretchen. It just so happens, Hoffmann beheaded Gretchen a century before.
Should crimes committed in innocence be judged?
The storyline in this game is pretty simple. Witches in this dark world are not only vilified, they're blamed for the sole reason for both the Black Death and the increasing number of monsters that are becoming all too common in the world. Of course, the reality is that the witches have nothing to do with them. At least the witches that aren't at the beck and call of antagonist Dr. Faust.
Oh, I'm counting on it.
The rest of the story can be summed up like this. Heinrich has entered into a contract with Gretchen to be her bodyguard until she defeats Dr. Faust, sending his witch servants with him. In return, the immortality that Heinrich is cursed with is lifted, allowing him to finally die. It's not a horrible plot, and it's presented fairly well. Could it be better and deeper? Yes. At the same time, it could be much worse. Knight's Contract has a player controlling two on-screen characters at once. Heinrich is at all times controlled by the player, and the player controls him as one would any user-controlled character in a video game. He attacks, moves, etc. He's purely a berserker type, and he relies on two types of attack, a heavy and not so heavy. As for Gretchen, she's usually AI controlled, but the player does control her spells. The game can easily be played with a blind hack and slash mentality, and luckily the camera actually behaves well enough to allow this with some efficiency. It is better if the player locks on to an individual enemy, but this slows down the erratic pace of the game. Also, your bound at the hip witch ally tends to get herself in trouble more often than not. Heinrich may be immortal, but Gretchen is not, and should she fall, it's game over. Visually, this game isn't half bad. While some of the game's environments seem generic and uninspired, they do have some measure of quality to them. Knight's Contract is by no means a AAA caliber title, but the graphics are much better than those found on even the best PS2 game.
I believe it was those two you were after.
The game's audio is similarly underimpressive. The soundtrack is full of stock fantasy video game music, and the dialogue, while it has its high points, is average at best.
True day. Just as I had suspected.
Namco-Bandai's Knight's Contract is not a bad game, it's simply an unoriginal game. It fails to do anything different or groundbreaking, and likewise fails to do any one thing exceedingly well. If you want a game that's slightly better than average, this is your game. However, if you want a challenge and something that's more gameplay than cutscene, then one should look somewhere else. My final Game Guy's grade, C+. This is Game Guy Barry White.